It's the second time that I'm attending this event, so and the second time as a speaker as well, obviously hosting the event now. I think it's a fantastic event because what I like about it is that not only do you meet your peers, other creatives, you hear really inspiring talks, but it's also kind of focusing on the business side of what we do, which is fundamental. Obviously we all need to make a living in whatever it is, but it feels like it's bringing many different strands together, and it's a very good exchange of ideas with other people in the same situation, with potential clients, with other people in the industry. So altogether I think very successful. I think the interesting thing is that I think it's becoming less and less about trends in a funny kind of way, because particularly when you're thinking about say residential developments of a larger scale or hotels, it takes about 3, 4, sometimes more years to develop a scheme, and if you're trying to work with trends, it's very difficult because in 3 years' time, nowadays things change so quickly, it'll already be out of date. So I think what we're seeing more and more is that there is less of an interest in trends, certainly for us directly, and it's more about kind of trying to work up a scheme, work up a concept that kind of sits within its own kind of orbit, if that makes sense. That is developed through history, research, whatever it might be, so it can kind of stand on its own and not rely on trends. But then we're visual people, so I think you always look and see what's happening, and it's certainly clear that it's going a lot more eclectic in the sense that there isn't one dominant style. And I think it used to be very much like there's one dominant style. If you think about mid-century modernism, everything was like that for 10 years or whatever it is. It's not really like that anymore. I think nowadays there are many different strands and many different interests and lots of stuff going around on the internet and Instagram and whatever it might be. So there's lots of inspiration to take from different places, and lots of different, whether you call it trends or whether you call it inspiration or whether you call it whatever it might be, but many different things coming together. Well, I travel a lot, so there's many things, but I think the one that probably struck me most for a number of different reasons was I was in New York recently, and the memorials at the World Trade Center. They are quite amazing pieces of. It's almost like a lack of architecture, because I'm sure you've seen pictures of it, but it was incredibly moving, and I think it shows you what built environment can do, emotionally for people. So that was a very moving, experience. Well, there's probably two projects that stand out. One of them was the one that I actually talked about in the talk yesterday, which is Center Point. Just because it is a hugely iconic building, and a lot of work has gone into kind of regenerating and bringing it back to what it was. And there were examples of using the outside pattern on the inside, playing with the volumes, etc. The other one is probably the German Gymnasium, which is one of my projects, which was completed a couple of years ago. But it's a beautiful old building that was built as a gymnasium, and that we turned into a restaurant. So completely different use, manipulating the volumes, playing with the shapes and forms, playing with color and texture and whatever. So I think a lot of the themes that I was talking about, it's got daylight coming in from above, for example, and at night time it's a completely different atmosphere. So I think a lot of the things that I've been talking about probably come out in that little microcosmos. It's quite a small project, but it still kind of encapsulates a lot of the things that I think I've been talking about. It's a good question. I mean, personally, I love working in the hotel industry. I find that fascinating. And of course, when you think about a hotel, it's got everything in it. It's got somewhere where you live and sleep. It's got somewhere where you entertain. It's got some, it's got everything in there. So that's a personal favorite. But I think a lot of it comes down to the particular project, because often it's the client, the relationship you have with a client, the overall project team, where it's located. There's so many things that come into making a project enjoyable. Most of them are. There's always some that are quite difficult or that go through difficult periods. But ultimately, I think you find the clients that you can work with and vice versa, and hopefully something comes out of that makes a project interesting and enjoyable. There's two projects I think to list. One of them is in Asia and one of them is actually located in Dubai. But the one in Asia is the Park Hyatt in Jakarta, where our inspiration was very much kind of looking at Indonesia as a country and the incredible kind of natural resources that they have. And then at Jakarta as this kind of crazy, busy urban metropolis, and kind of merging those two together and really trying to express, you know, both of those things in the interiors of the hotel. So it goes as far as materiality, so using local stones, you know, for example, local materials like copper, etc. Using artisans to do crafted, you know, carved timber panels, using ikat patterns and ikat fabrics, so really kind of trying to take inspiration from the local culture. And of course, not to forget including things like musholas, you know, all of those kind of things that are obviously very particular to the country, having, you know, scanning stations as you're going through into the hotel, which is something in Europe we most definitely don't do yet. So, you know, that's very much so. And the other one is a restaurant that we have just opened in Dubai, and we're actually working on a second one in London at the moment, which is an Anatolian food concept. So Turkish, but Anatolia is a particular region in Turkey, very rich in history. And the idea was, it's a very young client, and it's been his dream. Ruya means dream, that's the name of the restaurant. It's basically bringing Anatolian food to the rest of the world, a bit like Hakkasan have done for Chinese food. And that was very much digging very deeply into the culture of that region and extracting from that what represents for him and for us that part of the world, and bringing that out into the interiors. And there, for example, there are things like handmade Anatolian tiles designed to a pattern that we designed, but it's kind of based on heritage pattern, but it's a modern interpretation. So there's a lot of these things. We're using a particular marble that's from Turkey. So a number of different things have gone into that are very much representing the area that it's from. I think there's two fundamental points to that. The first one is being very conscious about what you actually specify. You know, it's all very well going in there in concept stage and saying we're going to have this, we're going to have that, you know, all great. But I think from the very beginning, starting to think about, okay, what is locally available? What is the local craftsmanship like? You know, what can they do very well, what they can't do very well? You know, what can you achieve, what can't you achieve? In Japan, you can do 5mm shadow gaps, no problem. In other parts of the world, including the UK, that's a lot harder to do. So it's being very conscious of those kind of things. And then the second one is teamwork. And that's teamwork with the project team, the procurement team, the client, to see that, you know, what you've actually specified can be procured within budget, not to forget, very importantly. And if it can't be, working together very closely to find something that is a good substitute, that retains the design intent, but is available, affordable, whatever it might be locally. Now, at times, for example, in Indonesia, there are issues about import duties. So it's very prudent to use as much as possible materials that are already in the country. So it's things like that, you know, obviously you learn them as you go along, and every country is different. But I think it's all about talking to each other and making sure that you keep that, you know, that communication going. I think it is probably keep an open mind, you know, look around you at all times, learn from everything around you, you know, be inspired, and listen, you know, listen to the people around you, listen to other architects, designers that you're working with, listen to clients. And I wish someone would have taught me that. Well, they did, but I didn't listen, of course. But, you know, I think that's probably fundamental, you know, keeping an open mind and, you know, enjoying what you do. Wow. There's a lot of people, you know, from contemporary designers like Patricia Urquiola, for example, Jack Herzog, who we saw yesterday, you know, very inspiring talk. You know, people that care about every detail of what they do, that think very carefully about their work, and that try and deliver something that is, you know, outstanding in quality.